General Wiley, Chairman of the Delaware Military Heritage Education Foundation, that sponsors a speaker series in the Delaware Military Museum. We'd like to welcome you. Thank you for coming. I think it's going to be a very interesting presentation. Today,
No relation to Catholic for you.
we're very glad to welcome Nancy Lynch. She's the author of the award-winning book Vietnam Mailbag, of which you can see up here, and that's normally kept in the Vietnam era room.
Huh?
And Voices from the War, 1968 to 1972, as well as Vietnam era Rick Lovekin. Where's Rick? There he is, right there. Okay, and a lot of this stuff.
This one for you.
Oh, good. Okay. As I started to say, we're delighted to have today Nancy Lynch, who wrote this book up here, Vietnam Mailbag, Voices from the War, 1968-1972. And I'm not going to go into any details, but because I'll explain it to you, but one of the letters that writing back and forth was this gentleman right here, Rick Lovekin. And they have been going around doing these presentations. This book here, I may have mentioned, its home is in the Vietnam room that General Wiley put together. It was underwritten by a grant from the Delaware Humanities program. Nancy and Rick's presentation is sponsored by the museum as part of the major General William H. Duncan Memorial Lecture Series, which is where we are today. A Bethel, Delaware resident, okay, Nancy will read selected correspondence from servicemen featured in her book. Based on nearly 1,000 letters and hundreds of pictures, her popular news journal column, Nancy's Vietnam Mailbag, received for 5 years from our troops in front lines during the undeclared and polarizing war. By the way, do you know Kevin back there? He used to be a sports writer for the News Journal, correct?
Yes. Correct.
There you are. Okay. In her final column in December 1972, she promised her guys she would someday put all their war letters and pictures in a book to honor them. The 2008 Veterans Day release of her 456-page social history fulfills her pledge. The book earned a gold medal from the independent publisher in 2009 for Best Nonfiction in the Mid-Atlantic. Lovekin had a medical disability and could have avoided service in Vietnam, but chose instead to enlist in the Army and spent a year in combat as a door gunner on a Huey helicopter and later as a crew chief on a Cobra. He was based in Bien Hoa and Vang Tao with the 147th Helicopter Company. He wrote frequently to Lynch during 1969 to 1970 tour, always signing his letters, "Your Man and Nam." He will share some of his combat experiences as well as a media presentation of images from Vietnam, enhanced with 1960 music, which you've heard a little bit about already. Now retired, Lovekin, formerly of Newcastle County, lives in Northeast Maryland. You're not in Maryland anymore, though, are you?
Oh, no, I'll be there forever.
Oh, okay, I thought you said you were in Newcastle. All right, my correction. They'll be available for questions after their presentation. So who goes first? All right.
Ready for
Do I have to use that?
Well, yeah, you have to. If I have to, you have to.
Oh, my.
That's the rule. Rule of the school.
All right, Carl.
We don't need no stinking rule.
Rule of the school.
Stick to the rules.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. We thank Carl. He's my new email buddy. I can't tell you, countless emails back and forth, but Rick and I are here today and delighted to be here and part of the Duncan Memorial Lectures. Vietnam Mailbag, is one of many programs offered by the Delaware Humanities, which is a state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities. The evaluations that you will be asked to complete at the end of this program include the Humanities contact information. Please complete the evaluation. That's our grade of our program, your grade of our program, and sign up if you like to receive information from Delaware Humanities about other programs. So as we gathered today, one day after Veterans Day, we remember our patriots, especially our Vietnam veterans. They fought and more than 58,000 died in an undeclared war far from home. For those who returned, lives forever altered, we gave little thanks. My role as a journalist during that war also changed my life. As a young rookie reporter at the News Journal papers in the spring of 1968, I eagerly embraced a new assignment from my editors. Correspond, they tasked me, with Delaware's several hundred troops in Vietnam who were receiving our newspaper. Remember then, there were two papers, Morning News, Evening Journal. Well, the troops were getting the Morning News free of charge as a public service. I would put any letters that they sent and any pictures that they sent in a new column called Nancy's Vietnam Mailbag. I quickly drafted a letter to my new pen pals explaining that the column was really theirs, a forum for them to express their opinions on everything from the war to the weather. Just tell it like it is. We wanted to hear from them. Soon, envelopes, all marked free, poured in from strange named locations throughout the combat zone, 12,000 miles distant. The landslide of war letters expanded the mailbag's column from 1 to 2 weekly, then 3, before winding down at war's end in 1972. The mailbag in those 5 years received a total of nearly 1,000 letters and hundreds of pictures. Throughout our time together, we celebrated promotions, birthdays, anniversaries, and arrivals of children, yet unseen. The mailbag even engineered an engagement or two. Not what we were about, but it happened. The war was close to me too, with my brother, neighbors, friends, high school and college classmates on the front lines. As we got to know many of these brave men and women during those 5 years, we marveled at their self-sufficiency and confidence at danger's door. Unselfishly, they airmailed their unvarnished, war-torn, homesick selves to us week after week. We read their apprehension and fear, and yes, their optimism and hope. Despite the grimness of battle, they found time to express wit and humor and gladly shared with readers at home their zest for life in the face of death. They made us proud to know them. Though their letters were addressed to me in Delaware, we soon realized their words clearly resonated far beyond the boundaries of the nation's second smallest state. First staters, indeed, spoke for all Americans through their words, and in the process, gave those of us at home an unprecedented window on the war. I made a promise to my guys in my final column in December of 1972. Someday I would put all their letters and pictures in a book to honor them and Vietnam veterans everywhere. Released on Veterans Day 2008, Vietnam Mailbag, Voices from the War, 1968 to 1972, salutes the authors of these war letters that transcend generations with their timeless relevancy and enduring spirit. Travel with me now back in time to 1968. Simple math says that's 54 years ago. I don't like that number, but that's what it is. So, to set the stage, Americans protested the undeclared war in Vietnam, raged at the assassinations of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and U.S. Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and thumbed the establishment with draft card burnings. The nation's mood soured on the endless and seemingly unwinnable war in Vietnam, 12,000 miles distant, yet telecast into millions of living rooms each evening on the 6 o'clock news. In 1968, its deadliest year, the undeclared war claimed the lives of nearly 17,000 American forces. Delaware mourned the loss of 36 men. We remember the riots that ensued 5 days after Dr. King's assassination and all the upheaval in the National Guard and patrolling the streets in Wilmington. It was in this climate that the Mailbag, my column, started receiving letters from Vietnam. Now my gripe, I'm quoting now, is I received the morning news from you, and on the front page was a picture of police pushing back rioters and a story of snipers and riots all over Delaware. Could anyone in the States realize how depressing this is? To think I'm in Vietnam fighting and my National Guard friend, who joined to get out of fighting, is fighting. That's quite a joke to me. Up until now, I used to think it would be really great to return to a world of peace and nonviolence. But now it seems when I finish my tour over here, I will return to almost the same thing as what I'm doing here. I wish people would realize there's enough trouble and turmoil in the world without causing more. In closing, I would also like to say, may I never meet or hear of anyone burning their draft card or defecting to another country. Though my views on Vietnam are not 100% pro, I am an American and I am fighting for my country. Army Sergeant Jerry Thompson of Dover, May 7th. Most of these letters are from 1968. And when we told our troops to write about anything, gripes were included. And one in particular that I'm sure many of you can relate to is this one, and this was 54 years ago, bear in mind. The traffic situation here in Saigon has to be the worst I have ever seen. The Kirkwood Highway would be nothing to drive down compared to some of the traffic jams you get stuck in over here. At least on the Kirkwood Highway, you don't have bikes and motorcycles collecting around you like flies. Army Specialist Bob Weatherby, May 5th. Some made us laugh. I would like to tell you about the Army, but my father always told me, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say it. That was all he wrote. Army Specialist William R. Lilly, June 17th, 1968. We clearly recognize the commitment to their country. This is my second tour in Vietnam, and I keep trying to tell myself the reason I am here is to keep those children of mine from having to go through what I am now. Captain Anthony P. DiBenedetto, April 29th. The war, in my opinion, is for a cause. That is, to free countries of communist control and let them have a safe and democratic life. I was born in the USA, so I will fight and die for my country. It's as simple as that. Navy Seaman Al Temple at the DMZ, September 17th. This Marine brought the war home in his letter. We're sitting here in our hill, at least it's ours today, but nightfall might bring something else. It's overlooking Quai San. We watch as Charlie, the enemy, throws rounds in on the unfortunate Marines as we watch the black smoke from them and wonder when he will turn the guns our way. It's hot and windy and gets worse every day. All the men are lonely and wish mail would come, but it won't. We look back and hear about the things going on in the States and wonder if the war will ever end. Sure, there are peace talks, but what will they do? While the talks are going on, so are the NVA, the North Vietnamese Army, moving southward and making our job even harder. Some don't even want to come home, for sometimes we think the real war is at home. And why don't we go north to the home of the fire and put it out? I would like for you to use this in your column and send me that issue of the paper. Please, we want all of the people of the United States to know what it's like here in Nam. P.S. War is our business, and business is damn good. Marine PFC, Terry Ivy, near Quezon, May 8th. And just as a reference, if you would like to take a look at Terry Ivy's letter that I just read to you, it is right back there on the table, and something about seeing handwritten letters. Mailbag readers held their breath with this battle narrative. Right now, we are as close to an attack as possible. All it will take is 1 second of the siren to have us all in the bunker. A battle has been raging outside our perimeter all day. As we put it, there are beaucoup VC, Viet Cong out there, all trying to get in. Last night, they hit Phuc Van, Ton Son Nhut Air Base, Loi Ki, Cu Chi, and Saigon. There was little damage done. Phu Loi wasn't hit, but we all said we were next. I guess we are. Right now, some of us medics are out on the resupply line and its various areas to check for casualties. The rest of us are sitting in the dispensary, waiting. There is a card game in progress and nervous laughter. Somebody has their tape recorder on, low enough to hear the siren over it. The outside noises are intense. We hear the thump of mortars and the firing of rockets and heavy artillery. The specialist, Philip D. Johnson in Phu Loi, April 5th, 1968. And ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome Phil Johnson, who is sitting right here. And we thank him. What a great letter. We heard opposing opinions on the war. I'm an armed helicopter pilot with A Troop, 1st Squadron, 9th Cav. I feel as though I'm doing a worthwhile job here. I've seen many a foot soldier killed or maimed by the enemy. Back home, we hear about the Saigon warrior, whose biggest day was the Tet Offensive. True, it was rough, but it wasn't year-round. The soldier in the field has it all year-round and gets little thanks for it. He doesn't have movies or cokes or continuous mail service. He doesn't get to see the Bob Hope Show or other specials over here. I feel the work here is for a worthy cause. At times, it appears the South Vietnamese aren't too sure they want to pay the price for freedom. I've seen some ARVN, our allies, units withdraw from an enemy force much smaller than their own, and other times I've seen ARVN units hold their own when confronted with quite formidable odds. With better guidance and some patience, I'm sure the Vietnamese army will come of its own, just as the South Korean army was able to do. If the people are given a chance to decide for themselves, I'm sure we'd have a staunch ally here in Southeast Asia. Army Captain Michael Momsilovich Jr., May 4th. Captain Momsilovich, 24, who graduated from Brandywine High School in 1961 and the U.S. Military Academy at West Point in 1965, was killed a day after writing that letter that I just read to you, when the Cobra helicopter he was flying was shot down by hostile ground fire. The 77th Delawarean to die in Vietnam, Captain Momsilovich was one of 187 U.S. troops killed on May 5th, the date America sustained the second most casualties in a single day. The most casualty deaths for a single day occurred on January 31st, 1968 during Tet, 245. Captain Momsilovich's wife and infant daughter, who never knew her father, survived. Let's forward to 1970, and a serviceman expressed his disgust with campus disorder and demonstrators at home. "I'm just one American soldier out of many thousands here in Vietnam. I know that most of us share the same views and hopes for our homeland. From what I hear in the news and read in the papers, I'm not sure I want to return home and have to put up with all those ignorant hippies and people, all a bunch of commies. I have learned many things over here, and one of them is endurance. But I can only put up with so many things for so long. Then I explode inside and stand up for what I believe is right. I'll always stand up for what I believe is right. It's the American way, my way. I'll protect my family and loved ones with my whole life. All this campus disorder and unnecessary trouble and turmoil doesn't make much sense to me at all. There are lots of ways to get the things you want, and I feel these people are going about it the wrong way. I didn't especially want to come into the Army, but I didn't go out and burn my draft card or take off to Canada or take any of the other ways I could have thought to get out of it. I didn't really want to come over to Vietnam, but here I am. Army Specialist, Richard S. Lovekin, February 14th.
I don't remember writing.
Doesn't remember writing that. One of many. Your man in Nam, right here. Wow.
It sounded better than when I wrote it, probably.
Well, it sounded good to us at home, and we certainly enjoyed reading it in the column. And 1971, leaving Vietnam couldn't happen soon enough for most servicemen. Now that I've reached the happiest part of my military career, the part of getting short, meaning not much time left, you can cancel my morning news subscription. I am scheduled to depart from Vietnam June 27th and ETS shortly after that. By the way, while canceling my subscription, could you possibly start one up for Specialist Jerome Lynch from Wilmington? No relation. Just send it to my old address. He was always glad to see me get a paper because he knew he would be reading it soon. Also, if I may, I would like to thank all of the people in Delaware who are showing they care by writing SOS Vietnam Group, from Bayer, and everyone else for their support. See you soon. Army Specialist John J. Dempsey, June 19th, 1971. More contemporary times, Carl, an email from Tony E. Apollo from Wilmington, who was in the Army. He wrote a couple times to me, and he wrote from Quang Tri, which is in the north of South Vietnam, during his 1970-71 tour. But he sent me an email, as I said, sign of the times. It's been a while back. I do have his permission to read it, and I would like to, I think it kind of brings full circle some of these experiences that these troopers have shared in their letters. And as he writes, a lot of people really expressed their feelings about the war and what was going on in the home front in your columns. I, however, was afraid to say anything that could be used against me at a later time in my life. So I kept it light. I don't know why, but I never seemed to be able to make waves. I always go with the flow, low key, stand in the back, observe, listen, think, and keep my opinions to myself. It may not be a good thing. I just sent a letter to Catherine Stringer, daughter of Lieutenant John C. Stringer, MIA, missing in action in 1970 from my unit. I happened to find her address on the internet 2 weeks ago. She was 2 years old when we lost him. I just felt compelled to tell her how sorry I was that we were unable to find her father. And a few years ago, I sent a letter to the mother of Guy V. Fearn, my best friend, KIA, in 1971. We talked by telephone and letter about Guy. She passed away shortly thereafter. My mind thinks my body is 19 again when I see the pictures in the book. However, when I see pictures of the guys in my units at various websites, man, we are old-looking dudes now. It's great to see how the military is treated today while serving in Iraq and Afghanistan and throughout the world. Everyone is rallying to support them. People meeting them when they come home, big send-offs and big welcome home parties. Heroes, each and every one of them. Now, nobody spit on me when I came home. Nobody called me a baby killer. I kept it a secret that I served in Vietnam. Told nobody. I just know that everyone thought that Vietnam vets were drug addicts, burnouts, waiting to suffer a flashback and start shooting everyone. I have to say, though, that when I got off the plane on the West Coast and nobody was there to meet me, I felt a little bad. It is kind of amazing that you can go from war to your home within a few days. Of course, you can't turn off your mind. You relive it over and over and over again. I keep trying to change the outcome. What if I did that or this? Why didn't I try to stop him? Maybe I am to blame. I've had a few flashbacks. It really effed me up at the time. Sorry for the bad language, but it seems to fit. A lot of crying, hiding, questioning. Am I better for having served in Vietnam? I don't know. For years, I felt like my life was cheated. Good memories of the past that I could have had are replaced with bad, haunting memories that surface when I hear, see, taste, touch, and smell my surroundings. Sure, there were good times and great memories, but also the bad times. I never really considered myself a true Vietnam vet. No medals, no major battles, no physical wounds. Just a guy who served a year and came home. I did my time and came back to the world. That's why I never really felt that my opinion on subjects was worthy of a discussion or print. Talking to a single person like you is easy, but to a group, that's another issue. My year in Vietnam cannot compare to the pain and suffering that other guys are still going through to this day. Thank God it can't. Best wishes, Tony. Thank you very much for your attention. Now, my good friend, Rick Lovekin, takes the podium. And it is hot in here, I will say.
Thank you, Nancy.
Would you move that chair out of the way?
My man and
I don't know whether I'm in the
Yeah,
best
thank you.
mood after listening to some of the letters, and especially the one I wrote. But I served in Vietnam, in the Delta area, 1969, 1970, helicopter gunship unit. And I did my job, survived a couple hard landings and a crash. But returned home to a stepfather who had sold my guitar, sold my amplifier, sold my car, and a wife that wasn't waiting for me. My year home from Vietnam, the year after I came home was as horrific as my year in Vietnam. My mind just wasn't there. I got lucky, I got a job after 3 or 4 months trying to find a job. But it wasn't in Delaware. I had to get out of Delaware. A friend said, Ohio is much more, tends much more to be a veteran-friendly place. So I went out to Ohio, out in northern Ohio in the Farm District, and got a job. First job I was offered was a milkman. So here I am, a 20-year-old veteran as a milkman on a rural route, and I didn't know the game. The game being, a lot of the ladies like the milkman. I got a lot of nice tips and made a lot of good friends, and my attitude was kind of changing. I was thinking less about what happened when I came home. And I got into motorcycles, and out in Ohio, you could ride anywhere without seeing police. It was really a friendly place to be for a biker, for somebody like me who needed to get some frustrations out. One of my customers on the milk route was a biker. He had 2 or 3 cars, and we were always fooling around trying to make the engines faster. But he got killed in a motorcycle accident, and he left behind the son 3 and the son 3 months old. And I went to deliver milk one day, and I didn't know he had been killed the night before, and there was a note, no milk today. Finally, found out what happened, went to help his wife, get her life together, sell some things, and long story short, about 6 months later, we fell in love and got married. So she saved my life. She says, I saved hers, but we both needed each other at that point. And, as she said, the Lord does things, and I guess he does. With the things that happened to me in Vietnam, and my father being killed in a bad explosion, having a bad I just haven't got to that point again to see the Lord. I hope I do. But today, in 1983, my daughter came home, teenage daughter from high school, and she said, here, Dad, I want you to see my American history book. She put it down, and she had it earmarked. She turned to it and talked about Vietnam. I turned the page, and there was another paragraph about Vietnam, and it went on to something else. She said, I know what you've been through. She was 13. She said, don't you feel that it's not right for America to think that much about the war when it was terrible? So I said, yeah. So I started to get my dander up and went back to a Vietnam Veterans group, Vietnam Veterans Chapter 83, and I brought the book, and right away I had 30 guys trying to decide how they're going to get the word to the schools, to the young people about really what happened. So we put together a program, and a lot of the things around here from that program, we've talked to more than 40,000 young people in high schools and colleges. We got invited in 1987 by the West Point librarian to take our program to West Point, and we spent a week up there, talked to every cadet. We had no generals during it, but we had colonels and lieutenant colonels getting me coffee and extension cords, and it was a great experience. Well, the commandant there sat in on the program and liked the program so much, he invited all the local high schools in to see our program. So about 30 of us stayed at the hotel there. What a beautiful building. Look, if you like medieval architecture. It just was going back in time. I got treated like kings. We all did. But with that, since then, you name a school in Delaware, we've probably been there. We've been going to Padua every year since 1988. We missed last year, but we're on Monday to Padua. The girls really love to hear it. Of course, you know, the government being the way it is, this first figure here, we don't know the true amount. I've read, I have about 40 books or more on the war that are first-hand accounts or other books written. And one book early says 2.1 million served in Vietnam. Some say, most I've seen it's around 2005. Now, Terry and I were at a dinner one Thursday night, and we heard a gentleman named Galati, who was a POW from 72 on, and he said 3 million. And, you know, I've never heard that many. But the problem is, even in Delaware, where we tried to get the names for our memorial, the government had no idea who served, how many. So even the wall in DC is kind of conjecture. It's, you know, it's good conjecture. It's we had to find out names from the news journal. We had people go through the news journal files for returning home guys that died, and you know, we just couldn't still find all the names, and we have empty spots on our memorial in Wilmington, and that 1983, the Delaware Vietnam Veteran Memorial was dedicated. And in 1988, a group from the Smithsonian studying the Vietnam memorials came to Delaware, and this in 1988 by the Smithsonian, boy, you know, I'm getting old. Smithsonian, this was deemed the most meaningful, not the most beautiful, the biggest, but it's exactly what it says. I know both of those men, and it depicts what we said in Vietnam, and we all crack brown, we all bleed red. And no politics, no religion, no other things ever affected us like our brothers. So when something happened to a brother, it happened to you. So of course you can see this reflects on that feeling. A black man carrying his dead white buddy in the field. Charles Parks, if you've ever heard of him, he did this. And we couldn't pay him because the state, nobody ever gave us money. Most of Vietnam memorials are done through raising money. And we couldn't finish paying for this. And Charles Parks wrote off about $10,000 worth of fees and stuff. But, you know, wonderful thing. You know, it's a lot of things about Vietnam that people don't realize. There was no country called Vietnam before World War II. We probably all know that here. In fact, there was no Cambodia, there was no Laos, there was no Thailand. And people say, but Thailand, you know, was never conquered. The word Thai, that means Thailand, the word means never conquered. So all the other areas in Indochina, India and China, that's where they were conquered. At the end of World War II, the French went into North Vietnam, the British went into South Vietnam, and in both areas, believe it or not, the captured Japanese who were there helped repatriate that country. You know, and we see some things, strange things the government do, but we all know about, you know, Iraq and how, you know, things happened there. Well, when the British got done taking their part of the country back to normal, they left. French didn't, they stayed, so we know what happened. We always supported the French. Dien Bien Phu would not have fallen, but a gentleman named Lyndon Baines Johnson was He was the Speaker of the House, or Senate, I get them confused, and he was the last vote that said, no, we're not going to send another bullet to the French. So that's how we got involved. We know the other things now. The most important part of our program is what you're going to see. It's slides and it's battlefield narrative. We have spoken to over 40,000 young people, and we're still speaking. As I said, Monday we're starting the new year with Padua. We put a program together where the young people can look at the slides, and we're not going to say, that's an M60, that's a Viet Cong. They fall asleep. They want action all the time. Even if there's a love story, somebody's going to get shot and broken arms about making love. I don't understand it, but so you'll see. The only thing I'll mention is I might show you me. You'll see me in a Cobra helicopter. You'll see. Down in the Delta where I was, there was many rivers, Saigon River, Mekong River, mangrove swamps. Not what you see in the movies, just a lot of boats on rivers. You'll see some pictures of that. You'll see pictures of Vietnam in the Central Highlands. There were some mountains in Vietnam, up to 5,000 feet. And you'll get a better idea than you see in the movies. But Terry's going to hit a magic button. And thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we need the lights. Oh, do you need the light, Terry? I think I got it. And these are all actual shots. Sometimes, I got them from guys I know. A couple of shots of the VC I got from books. You need that light again? That's counting the dead. For a period of time, we had to count the dead to see who won the battle. I didn't have to because I was an infantry, but a friend of mine said, they got so bad that they made us line them up and take pictures. So that's what that was. I get lined up dead bodies to take pictures to see who won the battle. Some of those I'll get it on second. Just there.
The end of everything that stands the end. No safety, no surprise, the end. I'll never look into your eyes again. and all the children are insane. All the children are
Armed Forces Radio, Vietnam. Good evening and welcome now to Night Beat. Well, good morning and welcome back to the Dawn Buster on this Saturday morning. Today we salute 8th Tactical Bomb Squadron. Here is news on the hour from the Armed Forces Radio and Television Newsroom. Senate and House conferees were reported to have reached plenty of agreement.
And the sounds of your countrymen 10,000 miles away.
The 2-1 delivery, swung on a bouncy ball near second base, and now passes shovels as they're going to get by the horse on Killebrew. And that does it for the Twin Threat.
Life as usual sounds so strange here. Do they know? Can they? Bon Ton, Play Me, the Battle of Iadrang, the Rock Pile, the Delta, Happy Valley, LZ X-Ray, Hill 400, Operation Crazy Horse, Paul Revere, Hawthorne, Hastings, Prairie. Names, big names for 1,000,000 small acts of heroism, for 1,000 yesterdays of American courage. But they are yesterday, and the war goes on. It is another day of war. Our night's patrols have returned. With first light, the rotors of our recon choppers whirl to life. Today we go after Charlie. We will drop into his backyard. Before the day is over, we'll meet him in battle. Miles forward, our artillery pounds the landing zone. If Charlie's there, waiting, we've got his undivided attention. Gunships, armed helicopters follow the artillery in, raking the landing zone with machine guns and rockets.
Here, how they do it. Punji sticks, anything else. This is the way they go about it. This is small, you can't see them, you can't find them. They drop right up on them for you. And when they hit you.
He knows how to use every weapon in the book. He can use anything you drop. So you gotta be real careful of him.
He can be where you least expect him, and then again, where you expect him, he won't be.
I'd say you hate him. I would. I hate him. First day Jim Guns got hit. I hated him ever since then.
The main thing I had to worry about is getting up, get out of those choppers. Especially when the hot goes in. Getting out of the chopper,
We're going in. Chopper's gunner opens up on the tree line. Touchdown. Get out. Move out. Sometimes the yells are just quiet. But sometimes it's hot. Hot as hell. Voices and thoughts from battle. These men know what hell is like.
It was just like great big nightmare, but then it's reality. The men weren't just hit once, they were hit multiple times. Both arms, both legs, stomach, chest, head. The men were still saying, there's 3 or 4 holes in them. Doc, I'm all right, just give me my rifle. I'll be okay. Let me hold them off. I said, Doc, I don't want to die just laying here. Give me my rifle, I'm going to die fighting.
They were coming in so close you could hear them whistle past you. You could see. Yeah, I was looking up and I seen this one just cut through the leaves, maybe 3 inches from my head. Looked to my side one time and I seen one hit the dirt no more than 3 or 4 inches from my side.
Grenade going off in front of the hole, grenade going off in front of me. I mean, right in front of me. I looked at it go off. And I figured, for a second, I thought it was mine. Just for a second, I thought I couldn't see, but then I looked up and I was all right.
All kinds of Jesus Christ, it looked like I don't even describe like people say it, like a 4th of July, because there was green tracers, yellow tracers, white, and all red ones.
None of us thought we'd ever get there alive, believe me.
There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. There's bad lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speak in their minds, are getting so much resistance from behind. Time we stop, hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going.
So I took a lot of pictures, and the organization I belong to, one of our meetings I said, like about 60 guys, everybody bring their pictures in on a certain night. And I spent like 5 hours with the camera set up, and I made copies of all their pictures. You know, I only took about 7 or 8 pictures. I carried a little camera, but I was over there 69, 70, and we didn't have enough pilots, we didn't have enough gunners, we didn't have enough. Nixon was winding down the war and not replacing them. For an infantry unit, it was bad, but for ours, we had eight Cobra helicopters, and we were set at 100 in our between pilots and gunners and crew chiefs in our unit, and we were down to 60. So I was not supposed to be in combat in a helicopter because the front seat was supposed to be a pilot. That's what the helicopter Cobra was designed, gunner, pilot. But somebody in the military said, no, we didn't want 2 pilots. Now, the collective, what makes the rotor go round is in between your legs in the helicopter. Well, that was the gun position. So they put the collective just on an upper little shelf, and it was worse than power steering. They tried to teach me, they taught me how to fly. And they said, look, you're going to learn how to at least land in case I get shot or something. So I spent like 3 days going like this. You know, almost, I was afraid to hit too hard. But anyway, so, you know, we all did double, triple duty. They gave our base security to the South Vietnamese Army. We had only been a few guys through the wire in my year. Suddenly, everything's missing or blown up, or, you know, guy next to me picked up his boots one morning, and we wore the black boots flying, and he said, this boot seems heavy. He looked in it, and there was a Chinese communist, if you see that grenade up there, looks like a potato masher, that's what was in his boot. So somebody had come in, the hooch maids or somebody, we had to hire the Vietnamese, and done that. Now, we had EOD come and defuse that, but that's what that is. And, you know, that's got to be from World War II. The guy who EOD said it probably never would have exploded anyway, because it's so old. we couldn't take a chance. So, but, you know, it was a tough time. Yes.
Did you take all those pictures?
No. I took a few of them. Now, there are a few. Now, the average age of our enemy over there was 16. 16. And anybody who was there can testify to this. A 16-year-old looked like a 12-year-old. 12-year-old looked like an 8-year-old. And then there was never anybody I saw to be a real teenager, because it seemed like they got to 20 years old and they looked like they were 70. And not just the food and everything, and in fact, the expected age of life in Vietnam was 42 when we were there. So when Westmoreland did make that statement about life is cheap for the Vietnamese, he should have said it a different way, because they had a different idea of life than we did. And that's tough when you go fight a war and you think everybody in the world's like America. Well, guess what? You know, I got off the plane there, man, it's hot. Where's the 7-Eleven? I want a Slurpee. Sergeant said, get your ass over there. You Slurpee me, I'll Slurpee you. It's bad enough having the name Lovekin. That was lovey-dovey. Everybody would give me a hard time. When I was adopted, my name was Beast. So when I was young, I was Beastie. And I didn't like it. I got picked on. So I thought, well, when I got adopted at 12, I'm Lovekin until I got in the military. Come here, Lovey, go crawl over there, lovey-dovey. And when I got used to it, then I was in a few fights, and then it became okay to call me that. But yeah, the pictures, and me and the retired Colonel Ed Jentz, who worked with the Guard, I think, in the 80s, maybe the 90s. 173rd, he's on the Ranger Hall of Fame. He lives in Virginia now. I talk to him once in a while. He and I sat down over about 3 weekends, solid, and with pictures everywhere. And I was a music guy, so I've always had music recorded. So I made the recordings and kind of put things together. And it's turned out really wonderful, yeah.
So did you narrate it?
No, well, you won't hear, you know, I don't have the best speaking voice, you know, but no, the guys' narrative, and, you know, a couple of the guys on there are actual, yes. There's one guy that, he says, a grenade went off in front of the hole. So that means, you know, he was in a foxhole and a grenade went off. And he said, for a second, I thought I couldn't see. And then you see him with bandages and he's holding a sandwich or something. But, you know, it was different than any other war. I will say, of the 2.5, 2.7, however million served, only about 800, 700,000 were actually infantry. Since World War II, every infantryman is backed up by at least 10 or 11 guys like us, making the food, bringing the ammunition out, and that's just the way it is. Now, Afghanistan, Iraq, I mean, that was such a cluster. I don't know. You know, I can't. But and my niece was the National Guard in charge of truck drivers, I guess in like 2006 or so, over there, and she actually had to dismount and return fire over there, and just like in Vietnam, one of the mistakes was to think that all these civilians are on our side. We gave them all kinds of jobs to do. And we had somebody come in one night about 3 o'clock to try to get to our helicopters. And the infantry guy shot him. You know, I went around, they took our guns at night on the base because I was in aviation. So I went to the hangar and I got a big bar. I was gonna hit this guy with the bar. You know, and I'm walking around thinking, you know, he's not gonna be nice to me. He's not gonna let me hit him. So anyway, it turned out the guy who drove the bus all around the base, that was him. And then we had one time the barber who cut our hair got in. So it was not like any war we've ever been in. I hope that, you know, we won't be in that type again. Yeah.
I'm just curious, do you think that the American public
perspective of it when they talked about killing young children was because these over there look so young, but they really weren't?
That's a good point. I didn't realize until years later, that, we were killing children. We were killing babies. I mean, they would, the VC would lay a baby down on the street, maybe in Saigon or somewhere, put a hand grenade under the baby. They were doing things like that. Now, I'd have to ask Terry, how many young guys did you ever see? Did you know how old they were?
No.
No, I'm saying you were saying that they could have been 18 and they looked like 12.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
what I meant.
yeah. It was really, yeah.
Was perspective of people saying, oh, they're killing 12-year-olds, and really they're the same age as you guys.
Well, and I was in a place called Vungtown, and, everybody said that's a good base to be. We were 10 miles away. I went into Vungtown a few times, and I saw these guys that had to be that 16-year-old riding around on motorbikes in clothes going to school. And I found out, yes, in South Vietnam, they had a draft. But in South Vietnam, maybe like our Civil War, guys could pay somebody else to go or give somebody. So that was really, really upset me a lot. Here we are, my cousin died. That's the reason I went to Vietnam. I only have one kidney after an accident, and I didn't have to go. Well, my mother screamed and hollered because the doctor said he'll never have to go. But once my cousin got killed, plus I hung out at Brookside. And anybody ever hear Brookside? And I was fighting every weekend, and I was like that anyway. But once he got killed, boom, I got kicked out of high school my 12th senior year. When he got killed, because I was a bad kid, but I'm smart enough to go back. So I graduated June '68, enlisted July '68, and I was in Vietnam by March. And but there's so many things about the war that, unless you were there or close contact with somebody, you would never know. You would never know that our average public would never know that we were fighting 16. And if the average age was 16, how much younger were they? And
much older.
What the VC would do was they would, in order to, they had no supply chain, no supply chain to give them food and so forth. So the way they maneuvered is they would move into villages, and then they would consume the animals that were there to eat, the rice and the other crops that were there. That's how they were resupplied. And what they would do is they would hold the families captive and take the young children and instruct them to attack the Americans. And as they attacked us and they were eliminated, then that's where the baby killer stuff came from.
Oh.
Okay. Because they stood up to fight us in order to save their families. So that was a lot of it.
And a really good movie, there's a lot of good movies about the Vietnam War, a lot of trashy movies. But Good Morning Vietnam with Robin Williams, if you've not seen it, I thought, this is going to be, he's a jokester. But there really was, and Nancy and I met Adrian Cronauer, didn't we? Were you there? Adrian Cronauer was in Vietnam, and he was in the Air Force, and he was a disc jockey over there for American radio, which we had transistor radios. But I met him at the University of Delaware, because I've been speaking there for 25 years. And he sat down and he said, I said, what about Robin Williams? He said, he got it to a T, except I was never able to push the envelope that far as he did. I would have got court-martial and sent to LBJ, and been jailed. But he said that was what, and it is a story. It does show some of the guys and how he liked the guys, but that's a real good movie to give you an idea. We didn't know who the enemy was. We had no idea. And I don't know about Terry, but I got off the plane in Vietnam. I already said I wanted a Slurpee. But man, man, I felt like I was 10 feet tall. I'm coming over here straightening this crap out. You know, when you're 19 years old, you get out of my way, I'm doing this, you know. And I got on the bus to go to Benoit, and there's no windows, no glass, nothing but chicken wire. So we're going down the road, and I asked the bus driver, what's all these chicken wire? He said, you'll see. I said, what do you mean you'll see? So he's driving, and I thought we were in Saigon. I thought we weren't in downtown. Well, we're riding around, and all these little people living in these little tin can huts and stuff, and cooking all dog and rats, whatever they ate. Smells were terrible. And he said, you see all these people? He said, I'll bet you every other one or every third one has a hand grenade or something and wants to kill you, wants to throw it in this bus. So our first terrorist war, I believe, Vietnam was our first war, terrorist war that we were on. We weren't after terrorists. The communists aren't much better, you know.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I have.
It's a great history lesson.
Yeah.
Great history lesson.
Rick's the real deal.
Nancy, the one for Nancy, I knew I wrote a lot of letters to Nancy, and I got to be maybe in my 50s, and I said, man, I started thinking more about Vietnam, and I said, well, I remember I wrote those letters. I called the news journal, and they said, well, all those type of things are in microfiche at the library, at the U of D library. So I went over, got a library card, and once a week when I had time, I'd go over and sit and look at the microfiche for hours, never find anything. Then I got a call from a friend's daughter who lived in Rehoboth, and she said, Mr. Lovekin, she said, this is so-and-so, and she said, we're putting together a book down here on the Vietnam War. I said, oh, okay. She said, and it's letters. I said, it's what? And I was in Wilmington, and I was there the next morning, taking all my stuff down to show Nancy, but what an honor. And I must have 60 books, as I said, about Vietnam. None of this novel stuff. But this book is better than anything I saw at the University of Delaware, any library, because it's all first person. And history books, I say this, I'm a historian, but I love history. It's always his story. Whatever book it is, if McNamara or whoever's writing this book, it's his story. And one of the problems with the books on Vietnam that, and I don't know whether Terry, I think will back me up, but on public television, you know, the latest by, what's his name? I can't remember his name. He had the series on Vietnam.
Oh, Ken Burns?
Ken Burns. I can't remember his name because he's in the, he's a good guy and everything, but he's in the same bucket with Oliver Stone as telling everything. But if you saw that series, again, it was the poor Vietnamese. It didn't show, oh, there was heroic things that, they're making movies now about a guy who delivers beer to the troops in Vietnam, and it's a true story. You know, and Terry will say he had a helicopter come in and you hoped it was ammunition or food. You know, you know, it's such a crazy time run by crazy people. I don't know. But thank you.
I wanted to ask you, at this time, I was working downtown at the Hercules building, and the News Journal was downtown, right?
Water Street.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
When you were working there, doing what you were doing, did you find any of your people that you worked with were against the war and made statements to you? Because they did in May where I was working.
Yeah. Not really.
No?
Not that I remember. We were all pretty busy. I mean, you know, putting out 2 papers a day, and there wasn't a lot of time for chit-chat. What I found more interesting was the people that would read my column, and it was almost like they knew, hands off, because that column was for our troops, and every letter was published, and I have to credit my editors with I can't say enough about them. They just let me run with this project, which was totally dependent on mail from Vietnam. We didn't get any letters. I didn't have a column. And not one editor ever came to me and said, you can't put that letter in your column. And this was started in '68, pretty liberal, I thought, for the late '60s. And then the people at home were very supportive too of the troops. Regardless, the troops had differing opinions on the war themselves.
Yeah.
And that came through loud and clear. But no editor ever told me not to
Because
publish.
I worked in the aerospace department, and I had been in research before, and I was doing Vietnam stuff at that time. And we were in a secure area, classified and all that kind of stuff. But I remember people I had worked with before would see me at a meeting and saying, don't you feel guilty about what you're doing? We're designing missiles and stuff like you. But do you remember the day that there was the protest in Wilmington against the war towards the end of it? You there?
Was it after the Dr. King assassination when all the riots were going on?
I can't.
Buildings were burned.
I'm trying to remember. There was an anti-war protest right down there in Rodney Square. I'm telling my age now, everybody. Rodney Square, but I remember we had policemen standing on our floor because we were the aerospace department designing stuff for Vietnam, and they were there. We had to close lines and all this kind of stuff because they were worried that they would rush the building and come up to us.
Well, you were at
Yeah, that was like, I worked for Hercules too.
Okay, you remember that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, I think it was maybe 71?
I had a big protest right there in Rodney Square, and I remember that.
Yeah, I think at lunchtime I went over and took some pictures or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 1971.
Yeah. It was toward the end.
We were in the Delaware Trust Building.
Yes.
And I worked on the 5th floor.
Okay, I was on the 8th
engineering
floor.
department.
Yeah, I remember us being locked down.
Yeah, I want to say 71.
Okay, that's right, it was toward the end of the war. Toward the end.
The war was still going on.
Right, it was.
It was winding down.
But this is when the big protests started going. I was just wondering if you would remember.
Phil gave me pictures in our slide presentation, have some of his pictures from that day.
Yeah, I think
I know you gave them to me.
Yeah, I think I did, that's right. Yeah, I can remember.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I do remember when he was assassinated, and I remember, was married at the time, and how they started burning Wilmington.
Yes.
And my husband came and got me, and they brought guns in the car and told me we couldn't come back to work for I think 1 or 2 days, and driving into Wilmington, it was like a dead zone with all the National Guard on the corners.
Well, that's
Remember
exactly
that?
right. I will never forget the day that the News Journal told all non-essential staff to leave the city. And I remember driving out of Wilmington and just looking behind me, and then there was just huge black circles all in the skyline. And it was surreal.
A lot of people don't know this, but '68 was the second year of riots. I was in 1967, I was in Wilmington Hospital having my kidney out, anyway, long story short, I played football for a long time and it was punctured, I didn't know it. Anyway, so I'm looking out the window, and that was the summer of '67, June. Nobody was allowed to come in the city after 7 o'clock or before in the morning.
It was martial law.
Yep, and that was the first time. And I remember from like the 5th floor where I was, I couldn't have any visitors, but when I could get out of bed, I watched part of Wilmington burn then.
You could see it too.
Yeah, but most people only remember what happened after Martin Luther King. Now, it was going on before that. I was at Fort Bragg when Martin Luther King was killed. Because I get along with everybody, there were some militant, Southerners and Northerners, but it was like people couldn't go to the shower by themselves, but I got along with everybody, so my buddies, my black buddies said, Rick, don't worry, I'll take care of them. It was mostly Chicago, New York, they were the militants. The guys from the South were the nicest people I've ever met in my life.
Oh, yeah, I had to have an ID in order to get you a work job.
Yeah, you were working in there then?
Working for city, yeah.
Wow.
When I was young, but trouble is, I had to have an ID in order to get you a job.
Yeah, yeah.
I got stopped 4 or 5 times. I don't know why, but.
You know, but, you know, I mean, we can't, a lot of people want to forget all this stuff. We can't forget it. You know, they're going to tear down the statues. This is going to happen again. You know?
I was